the Risk Control Show. And today we're talking more about active shooters. You know, every time there's an active shooter, we get into these situations where everybody knows everything and all kinds of changes have to happen, and more training. And yes, training's good. I advocate the training, but I think we get into these knee-jerk reactions. I talked about it back here in California when, Matt, you may recall this, like some of the
Mhm.
trucks came down the 2 freeway and one of the trucks lost control of their brakes and they crashed. And so the next day they were like, okay, we're outlawing all tractor trailers on the 2
Right.
freeway. Now, I drive the 2 all the time when I go up to Pasadena to do training for the guys and stuff like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, one company had a really sloppy safety record and were taking shortcuts on their maintenance of their vehicles and caused an accident. You know, and we're seeing that now with gas stoves. We're seeing that with this and that. And I don't want to get too far down this political uh,
Yeah.
sideway, alley. But the
No, you're
reality
right.
is,
The overreactions. Yeah,
yeah, they're knee
there's
jerks.
an over. Yeah, exactly. Knee jerk overreactions. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So some of this stuff is good, and some of it is crazy. Matt brought my attention to 2 little issues that just popped up. I actually heard another one. So we're going to talk about this active shooter stuff again, and some of the things that are going on and what it looks like for run, hide, fight, and some of the reactions there. So jump in and kind of, share where we're supposed to be at. What's setting this thing off, Matt?
Well, first of all, and anybody who's been following us is probably aware of this, but I'm going to say it again so that you absolutely know where we're coming from. The run, hide, fight protocol that the FBI has set out has long been the standard for how to react to an active shooter situation if you are a person, an individual in an active shooter event. So it's a decision tree essentially where you, depending on your situation, you decide whether you're going to run from the shooter, hide from the shooter, or you're going to fight the shooter. So what's come up recently is that, and this has been, I'd say the FBI this has been in place for decades now, Steve. I think like maybe since all the way back around Columbine.
Columbine, yeah.
So yeah, Columbine. Those odd city names. I'm not sure I get
Yeah.
those names right. Now we're getting some thought that maybe run, hide, fight is outdated. And we have seen, and it shows in the numbers, that the number of events is increasing, that the severity of the events are increasing. And we're seeing this across a year to year basis. The FBI's statistics show this out. And the thinking now, at least among some, is that perhaps we need to focus more on the fight than on the run and the hide. Now, that's not to say that running or hiding aren't the right decision in a particular situation. However, we're seeing a lot that when somebody takes the fight to the shooter, it actually ends up minimizing the harm, or at least relatively minimizing the harm, rather than running or hiding where you become a victim or the shooter comes to find you. Look, if the shooter's not going to stop until someone stops him. So we're now seeing an indication that maybe fighting might be the best way to do it. CNN's security, personal security analyst, got to get that name right, Steve Juliet came on and basically talked about how we may need to switch our thinking to emphasizing fight over run or hide. So, Steve, what do you think about that?
Well, um, okay. Let's let's go back many years. All right. Um, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up around guns. My dad was in the military, and he always had weapons in the house, right? And I was taught at a very early age how to handle guns. I would go out with my friends and we'd go shooting in the country on their farms and stuff. And, um, just even walking around with my friends and having guns in our presence, I was always mindful of the dangers of guns. And so growing up, I became familiar with them. They don't scare me. Um, Obviously, I don't want one pointed at me,
Of course.
but
Right.
I've been in those situations before, and I chose a career path that went into not law enforcement specifically, but you know, looking at law enforcement. I worked in and did research in prisons, those types of things. So I chose a career path, especially in safety and risk, that puts me in front of a lot of, I think trigger issues, viewer discretion issues, those types of things where we
Right.
look at a lot of dangerous stuff and we're desensitized to it, Matt, you and I, you know.
Yeah.
So what's my point with that? My point is that teachers did not sign up to be law enforcement. They did not sign up to fight bad guys. They didn't sign up to do martial arts. They didn't sign up to do gun takeaways and knife defense and
Right.
all this crazy stuff. And this is the one thing that drives me. And I'm just on the education piece here. But it drives me absolutely nuts. As a guy who managed 40 service providers, many security firms, 4 school districts over the past 20 years, though the one thing I always look for when we brought security professionals in, and they usually were all high level Secret Service, former Secret Service, FBI, those types of guys in law enforcement. I mean, I worked with guys that had investigated Rampart and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, it, here's the thing: the ones that could be successful in a school district were the ones that understood that the issue that they are dealing with is customer service. It is not law enforcement. Look, educators do not have the legal authority to shoot somebody, to arrest somebody, to, just tactically fight them. And we're seeing this, it's such a push and pull, right? Like
Right.
when law enforcement takes some kind of level of force against a suspect, um, that is condemned. And now we're saying, but we want to do it on the other side as individuals who have no training. And I think it's, when you and I go out and we do active shooter training, we always understand and we always tell the folks that, look, we understand that you didn't sign up to be law enforcement. You don't have that authority. So the point to that is that when law enforcement officials or people that work in that field come into a school, they're coming from a mindset that they operate in, and that mindset
Right.
is the one that they have had the training and you just do this and
Right.
you have already worked through all of the emotional side of stress and pressure and those things. And teachers don't. Little librarians who are in their 60s who have never been in a fist fight are not going to respond well in these types of situations. And I say that in general. I don't mean that there's not people that will. But
Right.
generally speaking, you know, um, a 25-year-old, 100-pound female teacher who grew up in a very, affluent area or even in a very social area is not going to necessarily have this aggression that is needed to fight
Yeah.
an active shooter. And I just find it funny uncanny, odd. But when these individuals come in, they're like, you just need to do this, and you just need to fight, and you need to
Right.
go after. You you're at the end of your spectrum of training, and these people are at the beginning. And I think the best illustration of this is this new show called Special Forces, when you have all these celebrities on there and they're breaking down and they're crying. Super Bowl champions,
Yeah.
MLB champions, you know,
Olympians. Yeah.
Olympians, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're breaking down, they're crying, they look like little children. Well, that's the reality of it, because they haven't been in those situations before, and they're stressful, and they're pressure and decision making. I mean, the episode where they have to drive through the combat zone, and the decision making is really challenging, and it's those little mistakes, which is going to bring me to my next topic,
Hmm.
um, is unreal, and so when you choose to move into taking or handling guns, attacking an active shooter, the little tidbits, the step by step process of that, the handling of guns is extremely dangerous. And, I train Krav. I've been training that for 6, 7 years. We do a lot of gun work, a lot of knife work. I've been to Israel to train with Eli Yalinov, and I spent 10 days there, Matt, as you know.
Yes.
And we did a lot of that weapons training. I did VIP protection. I did combat issues and stuff like this. I love that stuff. I thrive on it and
Mhm.
I enjoy it. But I will tell you that if I ever have to make the decision to put hands on a gun and take it away, especially when I have other people's lives around me,
Right.
it is a situation where one little mistake, I may not be shot, the shooter may not be shot, but the people that I'm trying to protect may be, because rounds are discharged and they go wherever that muzzle is pointing. And so the the concept is that when you determine that you have to fight, you better be able to finish it. And a lot of us
Yeah.
don't have the right training for that. And simple little techniques become big deals under stress. And really, to train that, you have to train that thousands of times. And so,
Yes.
you know, this is where I get into the the absurdity of all this. Is that, yeah, we go, like, how many times do we go out and train security, and they have us come out once a quarter. We train
Hmm.
security. We come back and say, okay, how many of you have actually done the training? And they go, nobody, right?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody's
Maybe
done.
one or two hands.
Yeah, nobody's followed up with it,
Yeah.
and their techniques are all over the place. And so it's not something you're just gonna do. I mean, I go down to Krav 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week and do this stuff. Um,
Right.
so we go back to training. Law enforcement isn't trained well. You look at this latest case with Tyree Nichols, and you just go
Hmm.
like, what the hell? Here's a highly specialized unit, supposedly, and no training. And look at what they
Right.
do, right? Like, they can't even take this guy down. There's 5 officers with all the authority, and no gun on this kid,
Hmm.
no threat from Tyree whatsoever, and they still can't do what they wanted to get done, which is get
Right.
his hands behind his back, and
Yeah.
not. I mean, that case, I'm so disappointed in those officers that it doesn't even begin to explain it. Heart and prayers going out to
Of
Tyree
course.
Nichols' family.
Yeah.
In my estimation, that that kid did absolutely nothing to deserve any of it, and all those officers have just done the grossest, most negligent thing that I could ever think of. It's unreal.
100%.
But take that example. Take examples all across the United States, and you see that even people that are supposed to have training don't have the training. So now we translate that into um, school districts, city
Right. Where,
operations,
yeah,
you know.
where this
Um,
isn't their thing. This isn't what they do from a day-to-day basis. This is a thing you hope never to have to do,
right,
ideally. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so training is one of the issues. Yes, everyone needs more training. You need a lot more training if you're going to handle the guns. But back to something that you said, the run, hide, fight um,
Yeah.
is it's an outcome, and that's something that is not well taught, and that's where we try to teach it. It is an outcome, and Matt, you know what that means? It means those are options for us. Run, hide,
Yes.
fight is an option.
Yes.
So we try to explain the one trigger and the two trigger method to that. So what I always will say, like, Matt, if run, hide, fight is an outcome, what does that mean? Is like, when
Mhm.
do you select that?
Well, when you're talking about the trigger system, you're looking for particular events to happen to basically put you in the mood where, okay, this is happening. I'm identifying that this is happening. Like, for instance, if you see someone yelling in the school office, that's a one trigger. If they then flash a gun, like, or they open up their coat and they have like a pistol right in their belt loop, then that automatically triggers, hey, you need to select an outcome. Do you run? Do you hide? Do you fight? And that's going to be determined by the situation, how that is. For the most part, I'd be recommending, hey, get away from that person. Get away from that person, call the authorities, sound the alarm, lock it down. But again, that's speaking in general. It's going to be different from situation to situation. I don't know, Steve. You can probably offer a little bit more insight on
No, you're
how that
absolutely right. I
decision.
mean, you have to have criteria by which you select an outcome, and the criteria we use a little trigger system that we teach people, and that trigger system is it two trigger methodology or a one trigger methodology. So in the case where you have yelling, um, that is a single trigger, but it doesn't add up enough to now select an outcome to punch the guy in the face. You know,
Right.
if he's wearing a dark trench coat and yelling and banging his fist, those are three triggers.
Yeah.
Um, do you now implement run, hide, or fight? Right. If someone breaches your security and just barges through the threshold and onto the campus, that's a single trigger that would warrant an outcome: run, hide, and fight, right? And so,
Correct.
do you fight the person? Well, these are all going to be, again, additional criteria. What's my proximity? If the guy pulls out a gun and sticks it in your face and he's right there, you don't you don't even have a choice in the outcomes. You have to
Right.
fight. But
Yeah.
if Matt and I are both in the same administrative office and I'm in the hallway to the administrative office and I can see around the corner, do I fight or do I run and hide and leave
Right.
Matt there? You know? and
Right.
and so those are, like, it's not always run across the campus and start fighting this guy. Sometimes
Right.
a better option is to run or to hide. And if we've talked about this many times in our training, which is time is of the essence. So the faster we can get a response or get 911 on the scene, the faster the situation ends. I mean, these things happen
Yeah.
in 3 to 5 minutes, and a lot of that time's
Yes.
eaten up with our reaction time, again, because of stress and pressure, and we're not well trained to deal with these things. But
Mhm.
why would you take um, a bunch of teachers from the back of the classrooms, on a campus, and send them up to fight with somebody? it just doesn't make sense. And so I
Right.
think, again, knee jerk reactions, run, hide, fight is a good protocol. You have to understand it. You have to understand when to use it. You have to understand that there are outcomes, and you have to understand your own limitations. You know,
Right.
um, sometimes you are not going to want to engage in a fight unless it is absolutely your last effort. You
Right.
know,
Yeah. This is when you don't have other options.
right,
That's when you go to that. And I should say this, while this might be the thought of maybe some security experts out there, they may be leaning to changing this. The FBI hasn't budged at all from this
right.
protocol that they've set out. This is still what they put out as the correct and proper response to these situations,
Yeah.
is the run, hide, fight protocol.
Well, and you brought up that the run, hide, fight there with CNN. I'll bring this back up, and alternate protocols shift away from hide, and again, avoid, deny, defense. All these things are run, hide, fight. And I just
Yeah.
love it. We always get that too, the nomenclature, the euphemisms. That run, hide, fight, face it, folks, just face it. The reality is the reality. And when you are not seeing reality for what it is, you become, I don't know, you become a victim to it because you don't understand what can truly happen to you. And
Yeah.
so lots of euphemisms here that go on. But yeah, if you want to get into the fight portion, then understand the dangers that are involved. You may not make it home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's can be admirable if you save lives, but if you fail and you know you, they now get into the classroom because you decided to open it up and fight this person, now maybe every one of the children that are in that classroom are perished. And
Yep.
that's a decision that I don't think anyone wants to make. um, Guns are scary, and they do go off when you start wrestling with them. And
Yes.
knives are even scarier. They don't have to be reloaded. They don't go dull. They don't run
Right.
out of ammunition. You get cut. um,
Yep.
so you have a lot of mindset to get over. And even when a lot of people don't even have never fired a gun. They don't understand the mechanics of it. They don't understand the parts of it. um, they use nomenclature that doesn't exist for it. They don't know. And so to
Right.
put them in a situation where, hey, I'm going to go tackle this guy, um, good luck with that, you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so uh, you have to be very well trained on it. I think there was another incident that you brought up too, which was this Hollywood thing,
Yeah.
which is kind of these two tipped it off. I will say that I heard on one of the news channels they had brought on a Gracie. I didn't see it, but I was listening to the audio of it, and it it was like, just do this and tackle this and take this. And uh, the way it sounded, it may be good, but I would say the other piece to this whole training issue is make sure you're getting training from the right experts. you know Gun
Yep.
takeaways are difficult, and rolling around on the ground with a gun in a jiu-jitsu style format is not where you want to be. You just don't want to be there. You don't want to be rolling around on the ground. And I
Right.
know lots of people watch John Wick and go, "Oh, I could do that." Um, show me that you can fight.
Okay.
Show me that you can
Sure.
fight for 30 seconds. Do 3 minutes, and then we'll talk.
Right.
Like, it's a whole different muscle group, strength. It's all about leverage. These types of things. So being very mindful of where that muzzle's pointing. But yeah, you tell us about that Hollywood thing, because that sounds
Right.
crazy to me.
So apparently, what we're discovering now, this came out from the LAPD. They came into contact with an individual who was having mental issues and making criminal threats. This was on Tuesday night. So they didn't automatically know everything that's going on. The alleged individual is named Braxton Johnson, a 25-year-old. So they got a search warrant for his apartment building. He's on the 18th floor of this apartment building, and he has wide windows, expansive wide windows, and an open view on a park and a busy street and a lot of people. And in this room, they found a cache of I guess I call it maybe weaponry, but high powered rifles, sniper rifles, a handgun, a shotgun, thousands of ammunition. So this guy he actually even had guns pointing out of the windows. So they're thinking that they may have just stopped this guy from potentially executing a Las Vegas style attack, which the Las Vegas attack, of course, happened in 2017, where a gunman was in, I believe it was the Mandalay Bay, and fired into a concert venue, an outdoor concert venue,
Yeah,
and,
they
and
just had a
killed
five
60
year
people.
anniversary of that, I think. So,
Yep. Yep.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. That was like September 2017, I believe. So
yeah,
yeah, 5 years would have just passed. And this had all the earmarks of a potential similar event where you have someone who is maybe allegedly mentally unstable and has access to weaponry and a high viewpoint where he's able to use those weapons to inflict harm on hundreds of people.
right,
So, and one of the things that the LAPD pointed out, which I really liked, is something that we talk a lot about too, is that they came into contact with him because people reported his suspicious behavior.
right,
They didn't move on and say, "Oh, that guy's just having a bad day." You
right.
know, they actually reported it, and that's what led to this discovery. And I can only imagine how many people's lives might have been saved by the police coming into contact with this person
Right.
and stopping this.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and it's just so crazy that
Yeah,
they were able to get in there and do it, and I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they
yeah,
did because we don't know what would have happened. Um, but you look at like should weapons be pointed out windows? No, I mean that's definitely clearly a violation. And looking at some of the weapons they were just showing, I was just showing it, Matt, on
you looked at the
the
picture.
video was
Yeah.
playing. Yeah, I was just looking at it. I showed it on screen here for everyone to see. You know, like some of the AR parts are no longer available here in California. So I don't know where these came from necessarily, but uh, good call. They'll have to sort it out and they'll have to see what's what and, why this person had these. It's not illegal to have everything that he had, but that being said, when you get a lot of suspicious complaints and things, you follow that up. So um,
Yeah.
it's an interesting conversation. But it's certainly with the recent events that we've had here in California, you know, get the training, do the training, take it seriously, start preparing yourself for these unfortunate, situations. And
Yeah.
again, make sure, like, I wouldn't necessarily get away from run, hide, fight. I think it's important
Yeah,
that
I
we
wouldn't
have
either.
one protocol to follow, and we're all following that protocol, stick with the plan. We see this with earthquakes too, the triangle of life. And that's
Mhm.
great, but the state mandates I mean, not run, hide, fight. They mandate duck cover
Duck
hold,
cover hold. Yeah.
and there's a reason for that, and we should do that. And if
Mhm.
you train to something else and people die, well, then you are responsible for that. So
Yes. Yes.
follow your school district's, you know, process and emergency plan, and realize, hopefully, that this was developed in association with experts
Right.
and I know that word is kind of demonized
It's
now.
it's getting looser. It does seem to
Yeah,
be getting looser, Steve.
but that's somebody that really makes sense. And just because you hear something, even from us, you have to vet it. I think you'll find that what we're telling you is pretty straightforward, but
Yeah.
um, make sure that you know what you're doing and that you practice it. And it's all the more reason that if your school district or your company or organization, however you want to say it, runs a drill, participate in it. And if you haven't watched that episode, watch that episode and just understand it's a very dangerous situation and you don't necessarily know what your body's going to do. If you've never
Mhm.
been in that situation before, you don't know what your body's going to do.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And it's funny. I was down there. Um, we did a little sparring session the other day.
Hmm.
And a guy that I've been training with, he had a broken nose before, and he's deathly afraid of getting another broken nose. It's the weirdest thing, but you could see he gets in stress and he turns his back, and it's those types of things that you have to be mindful of. So with that, we'll go ahead. It looks like Matt is in the ice age here. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If you got questions or concerns, please feel free to give it to us there in the chat or in the comments section. And don't forget to visit us on Dollar Training Club and Udemy. And you can see all the great action on YouTube and LinkedIn. And we will see you next time.